Hello and welcome to your latest update from the COVIDENCE UK study. My name's Adrian Martineau. I'm the Chief Investigator based here at Queen Mary University of London. And presenting today is our statistician, Giulia Vivaldi, who will be telling you about her latest findings from analysis of our long COVID data. Giulia, over to you.
Thanks, Adrian. So in last month's update, we started to explore how potential long COVID symptoms might change over time. And we did this using cross-sectional data. Now, over the course of the COVIDENCE study, our participants have reported COVID-19 at many different time points, some right at the start of the study, some even before they enrolled, and others later in the pandemic. With a cross-sectional analysis, we used data from a single time point. In our case, that was January 2021. And we then categorized our participants according to how many weeks had passed since they'd had COVID-19. And we used these categories to explore how symptoms might change over time. In today's webinar, we're taking a longitudinal approach. To do this, we look at all participants across their follow-up, and we track the changes in their symptoms across time. So this means we can look at how people were feeling 3 months after their infection, regardless of when they were infected, and we can continue to take these data at maybe 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months after the infection. The benefit of this approach is that we're not restricted to one point in time, and it allows us to take into account how a person's individual infection and experience varies. This is one of the key strengths of COVIDENCE UK, and the reason we're so grateful that people continue to complete their questionnaires every month. Now, just a reminder about long COVID. It's generally defined as symptoms that either continue or develop at least 4 weeks after acute COVID-19. Now, this definition captures a particular group of interest, people who continue to be affected by symptoms more than 12 weeks after their initial infection. Over time, these symptoms may fluctuate. In our last webinar, we showed that several symptoms, such as loss of taste or smell, might improve in the weeks following the acute infection. But it is important to look at how long these symptoms last and whether they return to pre-COVID levels. Today, we're going to look at 3 symptoms in particular: memory problems, coughing, and problems with sense of taste or smell. In our preliminary analyses, these 3 symptoms showed a particularly large change in prevalence depending on time since infection. Looking at our previous results, we're expecting to see improvements in coughing and sense of taste or smell after 12 weeks, but potentially increased memory problems. The question is, when do these changes start to manifest, and how long do the symptoms last? We start by looking at symptoms up to 12 months after infection, adjusting for age and sex. So in the next 3 graphs you see, absolutely everybody who had COVID was asked about these symptoms, regardless of whether they reported long COVID or not. First, we look at excessive coughing. The vertical axis shows the probability of reporting excessive coughing at each time point. And we can see that there is a real peak at the time of COVID onset, and then the probability drops practically to baseline levels over the rest of the time points. For problems with taste or smell, the picture is a little less clear-cut. Again, we see a peak at COVID onset, although at a lower probability than coughing, and then there seems to be a gradual decline in the probability of reporting problems with taste or smell. Now, the vertical lines you can see in this graph indicate the level of uncertainty we have about each estimate, and so you can see that compared with coughing, we're struggling to get a precise picture of this trajectory. Finally, we take a look at memory problems. There's again an increase at COVID onset, but then no clear decline. Instead, it looks as though the probability of reporting memory problems might increase slightly over time. So the next question is, what happens after a year? Over the long term, our questionnaire doesn't ask absolutely everybody to report on these symptoms, so we only have definite responses from people who think they have long COVID. What we can do is assume that those people who don't report long COVID essentially don't have these kinds of symptoms. They don't have a reason to suspect having the condition. So with that assumption, we're going to try to explore what happens over 24 months. Here, we can see a continued decline in the probability of excessive coughing over the course of 24 months. You might have noticed that we're not showing the pre-COVID levels here. That's because the majority of people for whom we have really long-term follow-up got COVID-19 before we introduced these questions into the questionnaire. So it's hard to get a precise estimate of their pre-COVID levels. We also observe quite a clear decline in problems with sense of taste or smell over the course of 24 months, which is similarly encouraging. Finally, we're going to take a look at memory. You'll notice we've got two lines on this graph because we actually observed a difference between the sexes, with women being more likely to report memory problems over the course of the 2 years. Here, the picture is, again, a little less clear, but after that 1 year mark, the graph seems to suggest that the probability of reporting memory problems does come down a bit, although it's a less pronounced decline than we saw with the other two symptoms. In conclusion, we found that the probability of reporting excessive coughing or problems with taste or smell peaks at COVID onset and then declines substantially over the course of 2 years. By contrast, while the probability of reporting memory problems increases at COVID onset, it doesn't go down immediately, and it may stay elevated for up to 1 year. However, it looks as though improvement is likely over the longer term. Additionally, we found that there was a difference between the sexes when it came to memory problems, with the probability being slightly higher among women. The next steps will be to look at the long-term trajectories of other symptoms, such as fatigue. We'll also want to explore whether vaccination against SARS-CoV-2 affects these symptoms, both in terms of their prevention, but also their trajectory if someone is vaccinated after developing these symptoms. Finally, we'll want to see how these levels compare with people who haven't had COVID-19, or indeed with people before they had COVID-19.
Thanks very much, Giulia. That was crystal clear. And I think the take-home message for me is just how important it is to us to have that longitudinal data, the data from all our participants completing questionnaire after questionnaire after questionnaire. I know that it might sometimes seem a bit repetitive to all of you, but actually it provides us with such valuable data and gives us the extra power in the analysis to look at long-term trajectory of long COVID. So thanks once again to everyone who continues to fill in our questionnaires. We're really grateful and look forward to catching up with you next month. From all of us here at Covidence, goodbye.